Hello everyone and welcome back to another tutorial on your favorite YouTube channel, The Power of Excel. In this particular tutorial, we're going to talk about a couple of very important functions in Microsoft Excel, that is VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. So the importance of these two functions can be assessed from the fact that in most of your placement interviews, these are the two most sought after functions which the company professionals usually look forward to or ask questions about in case you tell them that you have the knowledge of Microsoft Excel. So starting with these functions, let me first tell you about what these functions can be used for and what are the different parameters that needs to be entered while using these two functions. VLOOKUP is basically a function which returns data by searching for common reference value for data arranged vertically in columns. Whereas the same thing, if it is arranged in a horizontal manner, then we make use of the HLOOKUP function. So typically this function, the VLOOKUP function, consists of four parameters. Number one we have is the lookup value. This is nothing but the data which we want to search, that is called the lookup value. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to search some specific values in the master data on the master sheet, and we're trying to fetch data from the with respect to that common lookup value. For example, let's say if we have a list of employees where we have, let's say, 10,000 employees are there in a given Excel sheet, and we're looking at getting their details based on their employee IDs in another sheet, then we can make use of VLOOKUP to fetch this information from the master data without much of a problem. So the lookup value is basically the value which we want to search in the master data. Then we have that something called as table array. So the table array is nothing but the reference data or the master data where you'll be finding the lookup value. So that is known as the table array or the lookup array. The third parameter that we have in the VLOOKUP function is called the column index number, which is nothing but the index of the column which we are looking forward to extracting based on the lookup values. For example, if employee ID is the first column and employee name is the second column, and we're trying to fetch employee names from a particular master data, then in that particular case, that employee name column would have the index as 2. Similarly, if it has the next column after the column after the employee name is the let's say the email address of the employee, and we are looking to fetch the email address with regards to the employee ID, then the email address would have a column index of 3. That is how it goes. So that is the column index parameter. The fourth parameter that we have is the range lookup, which we use as true in case we have the table array is in the form of a range, and we are looking for approximate match. And whereas false is used in case we're looking for an exact match. For example, if you're matching employee IDs across two sheets or across two workbooks, then we'll use false as the parameter because we're looking for the exact employee IDs. But if let's say there are some tax slabs which are given, which are usually in ranges. For example, 0 to 10,000 might have a tax of, let's say, 5%, and 10,000 to 50,000 is having a tax of 20% and so on. So that is the case, and where we have ranges specifically can be dates also. Dates can also have some ranges. So wherever you have some ranges, then the range lookup value would be termed as or would be put as true. So that is for the four parameters: lookup value, lookup array, the column index, and the range lookup. Similarly, for HLOOKUP, we have similar parameters. The only difference is instead of the column index, we have something called as a row index number. Where we talk about different rows since the data is arranged in the form of rows horizontally and not in the form of columns, as in the case of a vertical table. So that is about the different the two functions, that is the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP. Now let's come to the demonstrations of these two functions so as to make things clear of how these functions can be used in different kinds of scenarios, and how important these functions are for anyone who is going to work in Microsoft Excel. The very first tutorial that we have is on the annual bonus of employees, where what I have done is I put a list of there are 51 odd employees, and I want to fetch the information about employee name, designation, and employee email address from another sheet, that is the employee master data. Let me show you my employee master data also. This is my employee master data. So this employee master data, if you go down this list, has goes to 5,000 employees, and with the different with dummy employee names, designations, and email addresses, which I've just put there for the purpose of demonstration. And coming back to the annual bonus employees table, if I want to fetch uh, the employee name for this employee ID, that is 1005, then this 1005 is going to be my lookup value, right? And since I want to search this value of 1005 in my employee master data, that is this one. So this becomes my lookup array or the table array that I was talking about earlier. So, let's get things started, and let's try and fetch the employee name based on the employee ID. So what I'll do is I'll quickly use the VLOOKUP function and open up the window for the VLOOKUP function. These are the four parameters that we have. As I told you earlier, lookup value. Lookup value in this case is 1005, which is my employee ID. And the table array I'm going to search for or use is my employee master data, where I'm going to select this data completely, all the 5,000 records. And since I'm going to use this as a reference point in my annual bonus employees sheet, so let me actually make it absolute so that I can drag this down easily without needing to change the reference cell, the reference cells in this case. This is my table array. Now the column index I'm looking forward to is the employee name, which is column index. Index has an index number of 2. And secondly, lastly, we have the range lookup. And since I'm looking for exact match of the employee IDs, that is, I am looking for searching 1005 itself. So I'll be making use of this parameter as false. So as soon as I click OK, as you might be watching on your respective screens, so I get this employee name as employee 1005, which is there in my employee master data. At the very top, if I go to this sheet, the top of the sheet, so this is my employee 1005 in front of employee ID 1005. So that is something I've got. And if I simply just drag this down, I should be able to get the employee names for these employee IDs. So that is the first parameter that we have extracted. Similarly, we can also extract the designation and the email address. Let's do that really quickly. So I'll again use the lookup value as 1005. I'll quickly go to this function arguments window, use the table array. I use the same table array here uh, from the employee master data table. And since again, I'm going to use this for the remaining rows as well, let me make it absolute quickly. Column index now will be 3 since my designation is at column 3 with regards to my employee ID. And the range lookup value that I'm going to use is false because I want to search for the employee ID exactly. So false. And as soon as I click on this, I get the designation value as 1000 and designation 1005. And as soon as I go down this, I drag this down, I get the designations for all my rows. That is for the designation. And quickly, similarly, I can extract my VLOOKUP. Using VLOOKUP, I can extract my email addresses. This is my lookup value. Let me go to employee master data quickly. Go to the top, select this data, change it to absolute quickly. then we have the column index, which now would be 4, and the last parameter would be false in this case. Again, exact match. So as soon as I do this, I get my employee email address. That is employee1005@abc.com. And I just drag this down extra or pull this down. I get my employee email addresses for all my employees. That is the beauty of using VLOOKUP function, and very beautiful. It has been able to extract all the different columns without much of a problem. Considering there was so much of a difference in terms of the number of rows. So we had 5,000 employees and there we have 50 rows. If we had done the same thing manually, it would have taken a lot of time and effort and things would have been very, very tedious and complex. So that is my first demonstration. My next demonstration is going to be with regards to student grading. So here I'm going to demonstrate use of range lookup value as true, considering we have ranges of marks in the total column. So what we're looking to do in this particular case is that we're looking to grade the students based on this particular range. That is, anybody who's scoring above 85 should get an A. Anybody between 75 and 85 should get an A minus, and so on. So these are my grade ranges, and I want to mark the students based on their scores. I want to give them different grades based on the specific total scores. So let me quickly take up this example with the help of VLOOKUP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my total marks, that is H3, for purpose of grading. This is my lookup value, and my table array in this particular case would be this grade mapping, which I'm going to select here. And I've already named it as grade map so that we are able to use it without much of a challenge. I don't need to make it absolute as such. And my third parameter would be in this particular case would be this is my first column, which includes in marks, total marks of student. And this is my grade. So the column index would be 2 here. And since this involves our marks range, wherever you have any kind of ranges in the data, so there you'll make use of the range parameter as true, the range lookup parameter as true. So as you can, as soon as I do this, I close this, I get this value as B, which is true since anything between 65 and 75, the grade needs to be B, the B grade. So this is B, and if I drag this down, I'll get the grades for the remaining students also. So for example, if you see for someone with marks 77, we have got an A minus, which is between 75 and 85. 75, anyone having marks between these two scores will get grade A minus. So that has happened because I've used the range parameter, the range lookup parameter as true in this particular case. So that is the student grading thing. And now let's come to another very beautiful example where we can make use of VLOOKUP to identify missing values and segregate values based on certain conditions or certain parameters which are already given to us. So in this particular case, what we have is we have the student admission data. And what is given to us is that the students common to both lists. There are two lists which are given, list 1 and list 2. The students common to list 1 and list 2 belong to phase 1, whereas students only in list 1 are belonging to phase 2, and the student only in list 2 belong to phase 3 of the admission process. That is where there will be two lists, and the target is, or the objective is, to actually segregate this data based on these conditions. So let us try and apply the VLOOKUP function here and try and get which students are there in phase 1, which students are there in phase 2, and which students are there in phase 3. So let's quickly use the VLOOKUP function here, and I'll be using the roll numbers for as my lookup value. So since this is my lookup value, my lookup array in this particular case would be list 2 because I want to compare these two lists. So what I'll do is I'll simply select this particular list, this particular array, and if I just want to make it absolute, since I want to take the reference and use it throughout. So my column index in this case would be 1, since I'm looking at getting the column, the row, this the roll number value or the index value, right? And my range lookup would be false. Now here I what I can have is either we'll have some specific, I'll get some specific roll numbers in this case, or I'll get is an NA, which is an error. So first let me just drag it down and then we'll simplify this. So if I drag this down, what we'll see is as I go down this list, right, all these values are actually not present in the other column, that is the G column. Let me just quickly verify this. So since none of these values are uh, common across the two lists, ideally there should have been, and let me see what is the challenge here. Because these values should have been there: 40195023, and student 19 and student 18. 64, and this is looking at these values in this particular sheet. So okay, I think might be because of I've used the concatenate function here to generate this data. This might not have been matching. So let me try and paste these values quickly to see uh, this resolves the problem to an extent. Let me see. This is also concatenate. Let me paste these values here as well. That should be the problem, if I'm right. And let me see if this we're using concatenate here also. Yes. So if I'm going to use paste special with values, I think I should be able to resolve this particular problem here. And now let me treat these as numbers. Right. So as soon as I convert these two numbers, I think that was the problem, since it was being stored as text earlier. So as soon as I converted them to numbers, we have got these as my common values, which are there in list one and list two, common to both. So if I want to display specifically anything in this particular case, that is, these are belonging to phase one, I can simply do that here by using a function outside this VLOOKUP function, which can help me uh, with this. So, so we can simply say that if this VLOOKUP value uh, is in A, I want to test whether this is NA. If this is NA, we should do, this is going to be phase two as per the given criteria. So let me put this in double quotes here, phase two, else we say this is only in list one, which are common to list one and list two, we are there in, those are there in phase one. So if I put it there, should be able to get the phase names here. right? And yes, so these set of students belong to phase one, and these are belonging to phase two. And if I want to get phase three, what I'll do is I'll quickly do the similar kind of an exercise using VLOOKUP on my list two as well. I'll quickly do that for the benefit of learning of everybody. So lookup, this is my lookup value. Then the table array I'll select is this one. And since I want to use the entire data throughout, this is my common reference. So let me make it absolute. And then my column index would be 1 again, and I'll use false. And that should be it. And if I simply drag this down. So students who are there only in list two is phase three, and the commons one are in phase one. So again, we can apply the if function, and within the if function, we can apply the is na function. So if it is na, the VLOOKUP value, uh, will display this is which is only there in list two. The students are supposed to be in phase three, and else we have phase one. So this way, actually, if you talk about this, we should be able to get the phase values uh, for list two. So these set of students are phase one, then these set of students are going to be there in phase three, right? And if you want to find the phase two students, so these are my phase two students, which I can get from my list. So that is how we can actually use VLOOKUP to find the missing values across lists or multiple data sheets, and we can actually find what is the need at that point of time. So that is another beautiful application of the VLOOKUP function. Now, coming to specific applications and the alternatives for the VLOOKUP function, we have multiple applications that we've already demonstrated through this video. So it can be used to extract the data across multiple tables, sheets, workbooks, and we can use both VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP with range lookup as false. HLOOKUP is specifically used when we have data arranged horizontally, whereas the examples we have just taken had the data arranged in a vertical in the form of columns. If the same data is arranged in a horizontal manner, then we can make use of the HLOOKUP functions also in those specific scenarios. And so that is the first application to extract data across multiple tables, sheets, and workbooks. When the reference column during extraction contains ranges such as marks or dates or tax slabs, for example, and in those specific cases, we can use the VLOOKUP or the HLOOKUP function depending upon the orientation of the data with the range lookup value as true. That is what we did when we were trying to grade the students in the student grading sheet. And this is another very beautiful application as far as these lookup functions are concerned. And the third application that we have just demonstrated is when we need to find missing data values. So which we have just done using the admissions data, the last sheet, where we actually found out what are the missing values. And based on the conditions given, we were able to segregate the admissions data into phase one, phase two, and phase three, respectively. So that is all about VLOOKUP functions and its applications. Now, the alternatives to VLOOKUP function that is there is the use of the index and match function, which I'll be demonstrating in one of the future videos, which can also be used to perform similar tasks and is a very beautiful alternative to the use of these two lookup functions. And so that is it from my side as far as this particular tutorial is concerned. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll be looking forward to having you on my channel in the next video in a few days' time. Till then, this is Dr. Ankit Mahindu signing off. Take care. Bye bye.